it requires more responsibility from you on a daily basis to prepare yourself for the biggest battle.
The 2025 clay season at Monte Carlo unfolded with a roaring crowd, scorching court conditions, and a stark image: Carlos Alcaraz exiting the tournament. This wasn't due to injury or superior play from an opponent, he was simply out. This marked his third consecutive early departure from major events he was widely expected to dominate: Barcelona, Monte Carlo, and Madrid. His grip on the world number 3 ranking seemed increasingly precarious, sustained more by past triumphs than current form. As the tennis world scrutinized his serve statistics and intricate footwork patterns for answers, they discovered no discernible faults. Then Novak Djokovic intervened. The legendary figure, boasting 24 Grand Slam titles and renowned for meticulously dissecting the games of Federer, Nadal, and Murray, finally voiced what his inner circle had been whispering for months. Djokovic didn't target Alcaraz's forehand or question his fitness regimen. Instead, he ventured into the profoundly personal and sensitive realm of Alcaraz's romantic life. He posited this as the reason why this generation's most exceptionally gifted player continued to falter in the most crucial matches. This isn't mere speculation. It's a stark assessment from one of tennis's most unyielding minds. If you desire an unfiltered truth that mainstream tennis media avoids, subscribe now, because Djokovic's revelations tonight fundamentally alter how you'll perceive Alcaraz's future performances. Novak Djokovic is not known for speaking impulsively. Every public utterance is meticulously crafted, filtered through over 2 decades of intense media training, strategic calculation, and a disciplined ego that knows when silence serves his interests best. Thus, when he voluntarily offered an observation about a rival's personal life, the tennis community should have paused, not merely scrolled past. The context is crucial. In an early 2025 interview, a journalist pressed Djokovic on the next generation's capacity for sustained dominance at the sport's pinnacle. While the question was broad, Djokovic's response was pointed. He deliberately shifted the conversation toward Alcaraz, discussing the myriad distractions and immense psychological burden that off-court relationships can impose on young athletes operating at the absolute peak of their physical and mental capabilities. He refrained from naming a specific girlfriend or scandal, instead highlighting a recurring pattern. He argued that this pattern was visibly impacting Alcaraz's results in ways that raw statistics alone could not adequately explain, emphasizing the profound dependency of elite athletes in every aspect of their lives, from diet and sleep to broader lifestyle choices. Many listeners likely dismissed these comments as mere gossip, filing them under love life. This was a significant misjudgment. Djokovic's own illustrious career serves as the ultimate guide to understanding why diligent personal life management is not a minor concern at the elite level, but a quantifiable performance metric, as critical as serve velocity or breakpoint conversion. He married Jelena Ristic in 2014, following years of a relationship he frequently described as providing essential grounding and stability. He has openly articulated that approaching Grand Slam events with domestic clarity, knowing his household was settled, his children cared for, and his emotional environment serene, was a calculated competitive strategy. His stable marriage wasn't an accident. He purposefully constructed it because on-court instability was a cost he resolutely refused to bear. Therefore, when he observes something different in Alcaraz, he isn't guessing. He's drawing direct parallels from his own meticulously managed biography. Carlos Alcaraz began his professional career in 2018 at just 15 years old. By September 2022 at 19, he had won his first US Open, defeating Casper Ruud in the final, and became the youngest world number 1 in ATP history. The tennis world hadn't witnessed such raw talent in a generation. His footwork was phenomenal, his full sprint drop shot defied physics, and his forehand under pressure landed in improbable spots. Then his personal life began to emerge publicly. Alcaraz has been romantically linked to a young woman from his hometown of Murcia, Spain, a relationship that became public through social media activity in 2023 and has steadily garnered increasing attention throughout 2024 and into 2025. Alcaraz himself has maintained a characteristic privacy, deflecting personal inquiries in press conferences with a practiced smile, suggesting careful media coaching. However, Spanish sports media, particularly outlets like Marca and AS, have shown less restraint, with coverage of his personal life escalating in parallel with the inconsistency of his on-court results. The timeline warrants close examination. Alcaraz won Wimbledon in July 2023, triumphing over Djokovic in a grueling 5-set final lasting 4 hours and 42 minutes, hailed as one of the modern era's greatest center-court matches. He defended his Wimbledon title in 2024, beating Daniil Medvedev in straight sets, and also claimed the French Open in 2024, stopping Zverev again in straight sets. Yet in the latter half of 2024, a discernible shift occurred. His US Open 2024 exit was unexpectedly early, and his 2025 spring clay court results have triggered genuine alarm among professional coaches and analysts. In April 2025, in Barcelona, he lost to a player ranked outside the top 20. Match statistics revealed his first serve percentage plummeting 11 points below his season average in the third set, coupled with an astounding 17 unforced errors in that single set. For a player of his caliber on his favored surface, against an opponent he should have comfortably defeated, 17 unforced errors in one set signifies not a technical flaw but a profound lapse in concentration. Monte Carlo yielded another pre-final exit, followed by another press conference where his answers felt rehearsed, his eyes betraying what his words concealed. Djokovic, ever vigilant, was observing it all.
They found nothing. Then Djokovic spoke.
I understand because as a professional athlete, the care for your body and your mind.
The specific comment that sparked this debate originated from a longer interview where Djokovic was asked about the intense mentality required to defend Grand Slam titles year after year. He spoke of tunnel vision and the absolute necessity of eliminating any distraction that diverts focus from the critical preparation window. He then referenced, without explicitly naming anyone, a young player whose personal circumstances had become a visible distraction. The phrase that resonated throughout the tennis world was his assertion that when a young champion begins to navigate a high-profile relationship during the most scrutinized period of their career, the unresolved tension inevitably manifests on the court. The tennis community universally understood his implied target.
Matches that matter most. This is not a rumor.
Getting the data and understanding what are the best conditions for living life that he can have for himself.
The conversation here becomes genuinely intricate, as Djokovic's observation wasn't a moral judgment or an attack. It was a structural analysis of how elite athletic performance deteriorates under emotional strain. Sports psychology has extensively documented this phenomenon for decades. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology, examining the correlation between relationship conflict and competitive performance in elite athletes across 6 different sports, found consistent results. Athletes experiencing active relational stress exhibited measurable declines in decision-making speed, error correction, and post-point recovery focus. These are precisely the metrics that collapse when Alcaraz loses matches he should win. The ensuing debate split the tennis world into 2 distinct camps. The first camp argued that Djokovic was projecting his own model, a meticulously structured, disciplined, family-first personal life, as the sole template for success, ignoring alternative paths. They cited Andre Agassi, whose personal life was famously chaotic for significant portions of his career, yet he still claimed 8 Grand Slams. They also pointed to Marat Safin, who rarely exhibited discipline in any aspect of his life, but produced some of the most brilliant tennis ever seen on a hard court. The core argument was that genius finds its unique path, and Djokovic was imposing his psychological framework onto someone fundamentally different. The second camp contended that Djokovic was correct, and discomfort prevented many from admitting it. This camp offered a different set of comparisons. Rafael Nadal's relationship with Maria Francisca Pirello, now his wife, was almost entirely shielded from public view throughout his peak competitive years. Nadal obsessively guarded this boundary, understanding, much like Djokovic, that an unmanaged media narrative around his personal life was a competitive liability. Roger Federer married Mirka Vavrinek in 2009 and spent the subsequent 5 years constructing a sophisticated traveling domestic infrastructure that allowed his home environment to accompany him to every tournament. Stability wasn't incidental to his performance. It was deliberately engineered into his schedule. In contrast, Alcaraz, at 21 in 2025, is navigating a relationship that Spanish media covers with tabloid intensity. Doing so without the benefit of Nadal's decade of experience in managing such boundaries, Federer's extensive resources, or Djokovic's almost pathological capacity for compartmentalization. The true question isn't whether his romantic life is inherently problematic, but whether it has become a problem at this specific juncture of his career. The mounting evidence strongly suggests something is disrupting his focus during critical moments. A closer look at his 2025 clay season performance data is revealing. His breakpoint conversion rate, which stood at a robust 47% during his 2024 Grand Slam victories, plunged to 38% across his spring 2025 clay matches. His second serve points won, a metric tennis analysts consider a reliable indicator of mental composure under pressure, fell from 54% to 49%. While not catastrophic in isolation, these numbers, when aggregated across a sequence of matches where he was the overwhelming favorite, paint a picture of a player performing well enough to be dangerous but not consistently well enough to close. Closing matches, finishing sets, and converting crucial moments that determine outcomes. This is precisely where Djokovic's observation resonates most deeply. The data doesn't indicate a decline in physical preparation. His movement metrics remain elite, and his shot quality in practice, according to multiple coach accounts, is still extraordinary. What the data illustrates is a player whose mental execution at pivotal junctures is fractionally, consistently, and devastatingly off. This fractional and consistent decline is far more alarming than a sudden, catastrophic collapse, which typically signals a physical issue. Fractional and consistent failures are almost invariably psychological. Djokovic has faced opponents experiencing precisely this kind of degradation across the net. He defeated a distracted Andy Murray in the 2016 Australian Open final, a match Murray later described in his autobiography as one where his mind wandered during stretches of the third and fourth sets. He also beat a visibly unsettled Dominic Thiem in the 2020 Australian Open final, a match Thiem led by 2 sets before something within him unraveled, entirely unrelated to his physical fitness. Djokovic possesses an innate ability to sense psychological instability from the baseline, much like a shark detecting blood in water. It is his most underrated skill, and it is likely the skill he was deploying when he made his comments about Alcaraz. If Djokovic has identified this as a weakness, he will undoubtedly exploit it. This is not a cynical interpretation of his character but an accurate one. Djokovic is the player who meticulously studied his rivals' dietary habits and adjusted his own nutrition to gain recovery advantages they weren't even aware existed. He introduced a sports psychologist, physiotherapist, and meditation coach to tournaments decades before such support staff became commonplace on the tour. During his mid-career slump between 2017 and 2018, he completely dismantled and rebuilt his entire support structure, returning to win 4 consecutive Grand Slams between 2018 and 2019. For this man, information about a rival's vulnerability isn't idle observation. It's a tactical inventory. Thus, when he publicly volunteers such information, only 2 explanations seem plausible. Either he genuinely believes Alcaraz needs to hear it as a form of veteran counsel, a reading that demands a level of generosity towards Djokovic that his competitive history does not particularly support, or he is deliberately planting a narrative designed to follow Alcaraz into every press conference, every pre-match analysis, and every opponent's preparation room from now until Roland Garros begins. Imagine walking onto Philippe Chatrier court with that story already pre-written about you. Every journalist in the stadium is already aware of it, every opponent's coach has discussed it, and every camera operator is searching for evidence of distraction in your body language during warm-up.
Djokovic was watching. He is always watching.
I think goal-oriented mind in sports is super important.
Alcaraz will not only have to defeat the player on the other side of the net, he will also have to conquer a narrative that Djokovic may have strategically introduced into the tour's ecosystem. This constitutes next-level psychological warfare, entirely consistent with Djokovic's competitive modus operandi. Juan Carlos Ferrero, Alcaraz's coach since 2021, has shrewdly avoided directly addressing these comments, too experienced to publicly fuel such a fire. However, sources within the Alcaraz camp, speaking anonymously to Spanish journalists rather than the broader international press, have described an inner circle acutely aware of the media scrutiny surrounding Carlos's personal life and increasingly frustrated by the intrusion. This frustration itself is revealing. One doesn't get frustrated by something that isn't exacting a cost. The 2025 French Open commences on May 25th, with Alcaraz entering as the defending champion. The immense weight of that defense, coupled with the narrative now firmly attached to his personal life and a clay season that has failed to meet the demands of his ranking, creates an unprecedented pressure environment. He has proven capable of handling pressure and delivering under it before, but this specific confluence of external narrative, potential internal doubt, and the most psychologically demanding surface in tennis, all arriving simultaneously, is genuinely without precedent in his career. Djokovic will also be there. At 38, navigating his own return to form after knee surgery in June 2024 sidelined him from Wimbledon, he enters Roland Garros as a wild card in terms of seeding but never in terms of danger. He comprehends the clay, the draw dynamics, and how to potentially encounter Alcaraz in the second week if the bracket permits. Should they meet, he will step onto that court already possessing crucial insight into his opponent's mental state, an insight the scoreboard will not convey. What Djokovic exposed is not a secret. It is a meticulously crafted observation disguised as a warning, strategically deployed at a moment calculated to inflict maximum psychological disruption on the one player on tour who genuinely threatens his legacy as the greatest of all time. Alcaraz is more than just a rival. He is the compelling argument against Djokovic's supremacy, the player the next generation will herald when they rewrite the record books. Djokovic understands this with absolute clarity, destabilizing him now before Roland Garros. Before the grass season, before Alcaraz has the opportunity to silence all doubts with a title defense, this is no accident. Nothing Novak Djokovic does publicly is accidental. Whether Alcaraz responds to this pivotal moment by fortifying his personal boundaries, refocusing his preparation, and arriving at Roland Garros as the most motivated version of himself, or whether the weight of the narrative further bends him, constitutes the most compelling subplot in tennis heading into the second Grand Slam of 2025. One outcome would establish him as the champion who matured under intense scrutiny. The other would confirm everything Djokovic has just articulated. The court never lies. Every unresolved aspect a player brings into a match inevitably surfaces somewhere between the first point and the last. Djokovic built his entire career on identifying that vulnerability in an opponent and relentlessly pressing it until it broke. He has now explicitly informed the entire world where he believes that vulnerability resides in Carlos Alcaraz. The sole remaining question is whether Alcaraz truly heard him. If this analysis offered a unique perspective, subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our Roland Garros coverage. Because if Alcaraz and Djokovic clash in Paris, everything discussed in this video will become the central narrative for the entire world to witness. Drop your prediction in the comments. Will Alcaraz silence the noise with a title defense, or will Djokovic's astute assessment prove correct on the biggest clay court in the world?
Exactly who he was talking about.
Look in someone's eyes and you understand this person thinks good or thinks bad.